Hello, everyone. Welcome to LOA Uncorked. This is Holli.
And this is Jeanna.
And this is a big deal today.
Big.
I mean,
epic.
Honestly, I had to do somersaults that were energetic because I'd break something.
Yeah.
Okay. And all these things because I'm so excited. We've been talking about this for days.
And honestly, for all of the listeners, I'm usually just a hair late. I was early today with bells on.
This is
ready.
True. This is true.
Could not be more excited to get here this morning for today's interview.
I love it. Well, yes, we are. We're gonna get right into it, Jeanna, so that we have enough time with our beautiful guest today. Yes. His name is Haines. He is the creator of the Vitality Test, which we've both taken.
Yes, we have.
It's going to be on our website too.
Mm-hmm.
And we want you to take it. And a co-founder of the 5 Institute. We'll talk about that. And the author of The Art of Kind and Flowing Relationships. Welcome, Nick, to the show.
Hi, Nick.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much. Lovely to have you here. And if you've been excited, you should have seen me. You should have seen me.
It's pretty. We are truly honored to have you today. So thank you for making the time and being here with our listeners. I know they'll learn a ton from today's conversation.
Absolutely. And thank you. It's like 6 o'clock in England right now. So
yeah,
we've got you at the end of the week. So this is awesome.
Yes.
Excellent. And we thought that it would be fun, Nicholas, to actually set an intention for the podcast. And so I have one that I got from you. Okay. And then maybe we can set a collective one if we want to, but I thought that we could breathe more kindness into the world with this show. And that's one of my wonderful intentions for all of us.
Yeah.
So is there another one that we should do? Is there another intention that we hope this information,
that hurts on people?
Yeah, maybe some understanding of themselves and how to carry that happiness into the world.
Well, if you think about kindness in its true sense, so at the 5 Institute, we talk about your kind set. That's like your mindset, except it's all around kindness. And the kind set is it kind to me? Is it kind to others? Is it kind to the planet? So if you just say, okay, we're going to do kindness, it's about kindness to me, kindness to other people, kindness to the planet, and it's about that harmony and that balance. And I've never ever met anybody that's too kind, but I have met people that are out of balance, as in they're being much kinder to other people than they are to themselves, or they're being, so it's around that harmony. So I'm really happy with kindness as an intention, because it's like all encompassing, isn't it? It's about our relationship with ourselves, other people, and the planet. So let's just stick with kindness.
Yeah,
I love that. And I know that your organization is rooted in, that's the heart of your organization is kindness. I read the comments about how it speaks to you. And I was going to ask you, well, what does kindness mean? And does it mean paying in the Starbucks line for the person behind you? And I think you did address that perhaps that isn't necessarily the kindness you're speaking about.
No. Because I think this is a really interesting conversation, because I think the issue is if we're constantly excessive kind to other people and we get that imbalance going, and we're not kind to ourselves, then we can actually start to feel a fraud. Like, I'm all this kind to outside, but actually I don't feel like a kind person. And you don't feel like a kind person because you're not actually being kind to yourself. Right. So it creates this imposter syndrome, and we just have to get more and more kind to other people, and less kind to ourselves, and more. So it creates that kind of that imbalance. Right. So I think it's just very simple. Is it kind to me? Is it kind to other people? There's always at times circumstances going to be a little bit this way, a little bit that way, but overall, am I getting that balance right?
Yeah. And so it's not about hierarchy, like start with me. Is it good for me? There isn't necessarily a hierarchy. There's a balance with kindness.
Yeah. But the problem is that we sometimes have to kind of redress the balance and actually say, okay, let's try and get this back in balance and do a bit more for me because I'm so out of balance. And then I've kind of got that bit right. Then you have other people that kind of do nothing for anyone else and nothing for the planet. And then they've got to get back in balance and do a bit more for other people, a bit more for the planet. So it's kind of just getting ourselves back in balance. And for us, each individually, it's there's some area we need to work on most.
Mhm.
And it's really about you're kind to what you value. And if you, and lots of things like the planet, we should really value it because it's kind of essential for most of us to live.
Yeah.
But most of it times out of sight, out of mind.
Right.
Whereas someone asking for help, they're right in your so it's about being really conscious of it and working out what it is that you value, what it is you matter, what matters to you, and keeping that overall balance right.
Yeah.
It's an art. It's an art form.
Yes,
Yeah.
it's definitely an intention and it's a mindset, as you said.
Well, and talk about flow. I mean, you know, what you suggested is, you know, you always have to be in awareness, in alignment with listening to where you might be out of balance. And so, you know, things will, as life progresses, things will evolve, and you will maybe pay attention more to others than self, or to the planet than self, and you always just have to be, part of flow is being aware of what's going on and adjusting as needed, right? So sometimes I need to give more back to me versus the planet or others. So I think, you know, that level of awareness is huge. And so much of your work highlights helping us all be more aware of who we are, what we're all about, and some tools to help us navigate effectively in the world. So I'm super excited. I love the kindness. I love the kindness intention.
Me too.
It's simple and perfect all at the same time.
Yeah.
So
what's really important to remember is that I'm only a kindness ambassador up till 7 o'clock UK time. So I've got about another 40 minutes of being nice and kind. After that, I turn into a monster.
I was gonna. I can't wait. We might have to go long just to see what happens. Yeah. I know. I can't. We'll let you all know how scary he is. I'm going to get this when the clock strikes. So, Nicholas, why don't you talk a little bit about your background, experience, kind of how you're rooted in the work that you do, and kind of what some of those pillars are for you, and how that's informed the institute you've created, the work that you've done, you know, the kind of conversation we're having here today, and just share kind of a bit about yourself with our listeners, if you wouldn't mind.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, we all have kind of like foundations to however we're created. And I think one of a really kind of big foundation stone for me was when I was 5, my mother was really ill, and she was in hospital for kind of around about a year, and we were kind of like fostered around different families. There were 5 of us. We were fostered around different families, and every month I would move to a different family. So it was like, as a 5-year-old, every month, and they were doing it for the reasons people do it for the reasons they did. Right. But the response was of moving every month as a 5-year-old for a year. That's a lot of homes you go in and out of. And what I did was I became hyper vigilant, as in I just started watching and seeing everything, because you have to fit in really quickly. Yeah. If you suddenly move to a different family with lots of other kids, you've got to work out things really, really. So I became really, really hyper vigilant, watching everything. And then by the time, then it kind of resolved itself. But I was always hyper vigilant. And by the time I was a teenager, I was like really anxious and stressed and panicky, and lots of kind of panics and stuff. And then I tried to deal with that by, I know what I'll do. I'll spend my time drunk. That will sort it out. And that wasn't great. So that kind of went.
Makes you forget for a bit, but yeah, it doesn't work.
Makes you forget for a bit. It doesn't really work. Doesn't really work out. And then doctors would give me various things to try and calm me down, and nothing like that worked. And then through a series of things in the 1980, I ended up living in Los Angeles. So I went out there. And I was doing some research into Kirlian photography, photographing people's auras. And it was at an acupuncture college. And in order to understand the research, they said, I had to kind of study some acupuncture, some Chinese philosophy, energetics, to understand what the photographing auras was about. And I kind of bumped into the kind of 5 elements. Mm-hmm. And I mean, you've seen the film The Matrix. It was like I suddenly could see the code. I saw how economics worked and politics works and relationships worked and how we interacted. And it was just literally from a diagram and going through it. It was literally, I thought, oh, I have a code now. And my anxiety just completely disappeared.
Wow.
Gone.
Oh,
Just went.
Yeah.
because you finally
Just went.
had a tool or an outline or something that you could reference to explain things for you or
Yeah,
explain things to
absolutely.
you. Oh, fascinating.
Yeah.
Wow.
So I had, because my anxiety was obviously, suddenly that event happened, I had to fit in. I was constantly trying to work out how the world worked in case something terrible happened or
Right.
thing. And it was kind of useful on some level, but
Yeah.
the anxiety wasn't. It was just desperately painful. So the anxiety disappeared. What was useful was I had 10, 12 years of going through every sort of therapy experience and trying things out to get rid of the anxiety. So I kind of, I know how to deal with anxiety for other people. I just couldn't deal with it for myself until I did the energies and the conscious questions I developed and stuff from it. So yeah, I saw this complete matrix. I saw how the world worked. And it wasn't just about health. It was, like I say, economics, politics, history, human behavior, family, dynamics. I just literally saw this whole picture. And I've spent my kind of adult life trying to explain to other people, this is the matrix. This is what's going on really behind. I went to China, worked in a big hospital, and I went kind of there. I thought, okay, I'm going to go there, China, they'll know about it. And I talked to them, this was in the 1980s, and I talked to some very old Chinese doctors that were kind of pre-communists that knew all this stuff. And I said, oh, what about this and how it is? They didn't have a clue, didn't know what I was talking about. But when you looked at ancient Chinese textbooks, ancient Chinese works from like 2,000-3,000 years ago, they talk about it. They talk about the matrix, now everything is energy and how it's all working. It was just kind of lost. And there was a period in China just over 2,000 years ago, a 15-year period in which they burnt every single book that talked about the energies and how they interacted. We know the books existed because we've got the libraries, we've got the records of these, but we didn't know what was in these books. So I've kind of, like I said, I've spent my adult life trying to reform this back into the world.
Wow.
The Five Institute is about internal and external cultures. How do we live with ourselves? How do we live together? And then I've got this stuff about the energies of the years and economics and politics. And I even do a really cool thing about the energy of toilet seats and how they work.
Listen, toilets are big here on this show.
I mean,
Toilets are big on
we
this
actually
show.
talk about toilets.
Well, quite often, actually. So
Yeah.
we'll have to.
We want to be sponsored by the Toto. So
Yeah.
I'm your man. I can do the energy of different toilet
We
seats.
only like
I'm
the
your man.
self-warming ones, though.
Yes,
The
exactly.
seats that
Okay.
self-warm.
we don't want the ones that
That's-
talk to you. I mean,
No,
no.
But the warmers,
no.
definitely.
We don't want them talking
all
to you in the
about
middle of the night.
Well, warm and warm toilet seat. That's a very kind of fire energy thing. Fire and earth,
Yeah.
bit of fire and earth energy kind of
Of course,
brings that together.
Miss Fire would like a fire.
La
you know,
hotter,
seated.
the better. That's right. That's right. That's right. Wow. Do you have a sense for why, what was the, did you get a sense when you were in China, why they burned all the books? Like what that was about? Is that just,
Yeah.
what was that? I'm curious.
So what it was, there was a dynasty called the Zhou dynasty that was just over to, it ran for nearly 1,000 years, started at about 3,000 years ago. I'm dyslexic, I'm not great at dates, but it started about 3,000 years, ran for nearly 1,000 years. And then it was defeated by a dynasty called the Qin. And the Qin took over, but that dynasty lasted 15 years.
Oh,
So we've got one dynasty that lasts over 1,000 and the other one lasted 15.
yeah.
But in that 15 years, they burnt all the books. And they didn't, it's a bit gruesome, they didn't burn all the books. It was known as the Great Fires of Qin. And they burnt the books, but they also buried alive all the philosophers, because that period of time was known as the time of 100 philosophers. So it's when Taoism started, Confucianism started, it was all that period of great blossoming of philosophy. And then the Qin came in for 15 years and they just they were what's known as legalists. So it was all about the law and things, and they just didn't want any other philosophers or any other philosophies. So they just burnt all the books and they just did that. But they only lasted 15 years, but we lost everything. We lost everything, apart from things like the I Ching, left behind a little bit in medicine, the art of warfare. They're about the only 3 big books that got left behind.
Wow.
Is that, I mean, were the elements, or have you, or track the elements back to that period of time? Did that period of time, does that fall in a particular element? Like that's a metal time, or, I mean, we should probably talk about what the elements are, but what are the elements, and was that like kind of a known
almost
cycle? Yeah, by design.
Yeah, they kind of, each of the dynasties was related to a particular energy. But what the Qin were, I mean, they built the Great Wall of China in 15 years. You know, they united the whole of China with a written language. They united the whole of China with a spoken language. Because they basically said, if you don't write like this and you don't speak like this, we'll kill you. It's a very efficient way to get things done.
That moves things along quickly.
And they took over because they did things like there was a certain honor that when your enemy was crossing a river, you would let them get to the other side, and then you would have the battle and all be fine. Well, the Qin would wait until everyone was in the river, and then they would have a go at you. So it's kind of, it's kind of sneaky stuff. But it was a bit disruptive. But the issue was about that loss of that wealth of information, and this just understanding of how the world works. And so, my life, I've really kind of spent kind of putting that back out into the world and say, okay, this is how you might want to look at this. And that's been my last 40 plus years or so.
Wow, that's incredible. I mean, the richness of not only just the history, but the work itself and understanding it's very, very complex. I know we talked, Nicholas, Holli and I, before we scheduled this. My dad was very much into I Ching and feng shui and, all that work, and just the deepness and richness of those processes. I don't even know what to call them. Processes, philosophies is extraordinary. And so just even understanding those, let alone the history and how they fit into a more complex view of society and the world, is just phenomenal. So I'm sure your 40 years have been busy getting all that under, and then being able to share it with other people too, and helping people understand those principles and tools, and it's huge. So
busy. He created the vitality test, which we took. It was one test that we ran towards.
We did.
We run away from tests usually.
Yeah. I mean,
but it's about us. We'll run towards it.
I was pretty sure we couldn't fail.
Right. There was
that
no
was a little easier.
Yeah, exactly. And I didn't have to call you and say, well, what's my answer, Jeanna? Sometimes I take a test. I'm like, Jeanna, I'm not sure. How do I feel about that? Do I want a hug, or do I want,
you did a good job on that. Yeah.
Anyway, no, I did it all by myself, my little self. So can you talk a little bit about the vitality test? And of course, we're going to link this for our audience. We want everybody to go take it, and it's free too. It's free.
Yes.
You share it.
It's free. Yeah. So the basic idea is that we were all born with a kind of like an energy blueprint, and that kind of it pretty well kind of stays all our life, and it's based around the kind of these balance of these kind of 5 energies. And where you have your dominant energies, that tends to be how you'll see the world, what you'll gravitate or move towards. And where you have your low energies, that tends to be where you have your blind spots. We'll talk about when people have a balance of all 5 fairly equally, but most people have 1 or 2 that are more dominant, and that's how you tend to see the world. And each energy has a kind of big question to it, and it's a question you're constantly asking throughout your life in different ways, and potentially testing as well to find the answer to the big question. So should we go through the energies so everyone listening can kind of get a bit of an idea?
Yes, that'd be fantastic.
Okay. So the first energy is water energy, and that's related to winter. And in winter, you live with the consequences of your actions. So people with a lot of water energy are always looking at consequences. Well, how will this play out? How will that be? And their big question is, am I safe? Is it safe? How is this going to be? So that's what they're kind of always looking for. As a energy, they have a very kind of want to look as a big perspective, a big picture. Well, why do they want a big picture? Well, that's a really good way to be safe. The bigger your picture, the wider your perspective, the less surprises. So they have a very big perspective on life. They're reflective with water. And they also have this power that water gives of being willing to constantly work away at something. And they're always looking to this safety thing, but also, is it sustainable? Is it going to last? Which is all around that safety, sustainability. They're looking about resources. So someone like Richard Branson, you'll often see them with a kind of square jaw. So you'll often find news agencies will have female news anchors will have a lot of water energy. So you'll see this. If you look at the news, you'll see all these, particularly women, you'll see with big square jaws. And that's because we tend to trust people with a lot of water energy. Whether or not the news is trustworthy or not, we trust the people with that energy. So they're all the time. They're kind of, so Richard Branson has lots of water energy. So he has this big, but he has all this stuff going around safety in the brand and aeroplanes, that they need to be safe and stuff. But then he'll go out into outer space in a hot air balloon.
Right.
Thinking, what's that about? You're all about things. And then he's got all about the safety of the safety of the brand and safety of, so he has some other stuff kind of going on, which makes it difficult. Then you've got wood energy, and that's related to spring, and spring is about new, fresh, innovative. So if you have a lot of wood energy, it's about innovation, doing things differently, being disruptive, being rebellious, being challenging.
Gina's pointing at me for those that are listening.
Yes.
That would be me. Am I, and that question, am I free?
Yeah, so that's their big question, is, am I free?
Yeah.
And that's all the time kind of playing out. And they tend to have longer faces and this freedom. Remember, we can have a mixture of these energies, but they have this big thing going around freedom. So they'll sometimes test their freedom. They say, I'm going to say something outrageous now, just to see whether I have the freedom to do whatever I want. And they don't like to be trapped. And it doesn't matter whether something is right or wrong, just don't trap me. They always have a big sense around justice and injustice. And they say, okay, no, that's really and they will stand up against anybody and anything if there's an injustice that kind of goes on. It's a really kind of big thing about the world being fair. They play with the rules, as in, stick to my rules, but I'm not 100% sure I'll stick to your rules.
Right.
So they'll have cross the rules, and they'll be everything, but then they'll go and park anywhere they want to, because it's not that important. So it's that kind of freedom, rules playing and stuff like that.
Those rules don't apply to them always.
Those rules don't apply to them. Or the other thing they'll typically do, if they're an entrepreneur or something new will come along that's a bit kind of confusing, and they'll go, okay, here are the rules. This is how it works, everybody. Everyone goes, okay, thank you. So they love things new. They'll be early adopters, and they'll work out the rules of the game.
Yeah. So true.
And then break them after they work them out.
They're the developer of the game. They are the referee of the game. They are the scorekeeper of the game.
Well, one of our badassery principles is, I haven't met a rule I haven't wanted to break. Okay, that's one of the principles.
So true.
Unless I'm in an airplane flying or something. I mean, don't do that. Okay, but
So someone like Dr. Martin Luther King had a lot of wood energy. So he was very clear about, okay, these are the rules, let's keep within them, but let's actually be very disruptive within the rules.
Right.
So and they're very visionary. They see a different future that other people can see.
Yes.
So you would see that, and they're connected with your imagination and dreaming and stuff like that. So hence, I had a dream. Then you have kind of fire energy, and that's related to summer, and it's hot and it's passionate, and there is a kind of, we naturally, as we know, we kind of naturally warm towards people with a lot of fire energy, and their question is, am I loved? Are we loved? So it's about, am I loved? Am I valued? Am I appreciated?
Yeah.
When it goes wrong, it's kind of, oh, love me, love me, love me.
Right,
Desperate.
Jeanna?
That's my desperate mode.
That's
yeah.
your desperate mode.
Yeah, you looked a lot
Desperate.
like me just then, Nick. Yeah. Yep. Yes. No. That is true. That is true. Yeah.
But if you really kind of think what's their kind of absolute gift is, and you're doing it here on the interview, you're all the time working out whether I'm okay and this is going okay and things are going okay and how are we feeling together, and you're holding, I can watch you holding that space.
Yes.
But Holli's saying, okay, let's do this now, let's do this, and you're going, okay, how's the love going on?
Exactly. Yeah, I don't want
And
her
you'll
to
be thinking,
disrupt our love. Nick. That's the reality. Is I don't ever
Listen,
want
my
Holly to get
second
in the way of my
energy
love.
is fire.
Oh, that's true. That's true. You have a little. You
There we
temperate
go.
maybe with a
So
little-
I'm holding some space here
Yeah,
too,
but
and
that is
knocking out the rules.
So true.
So Holly's just come in with, well, that was a bit unjust. I've got some fire energy as well.
she blew the whistle. That's a foul in the game. I was being not nice to her. Yeah.
I love that. I mean,
So
before
true.
we get to earth and metal, I have people, my Virgo people, because I'm like going, okay, I have a dream that's Pisces. I have a lot of Pisces energy. I think in terms of astrology, you know, because
Yeah.
I'm an astrologer. And so my Virgo people are going to want to know about and maybe you can address this as you go. So I know I'm over 50% with my wood and my fire, but my wood is much more than fire for sure. But the combined is over 50%. Is there like a striking zone of like how much, you know, how much that shows up the fire versus the wood? And is there a percent that you can say, okay, yeah, you're really coming with the am I loved and am I
More
free?
dominant, yeah.
Energy. And because my Virgos are going to want to look and put some statistics on their test results.
Yeah.
So and I have a little Virgo in me too, so I think a little bit like that.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things we'll do if we've done work and we're kind of evolving is we'll shape shift between the energies. We'll kind of be in a kind of wood energy space, or we'll move into kind of into kind of fire energy. So I've got equal wood, fire, and earth. So we could in this interview, I could just be really disruptive and say difficult things and stuff like that. But my fire energy says, hey, well, I love these people. We've only had a couple of meetings, but I've fallen in love. You know, there's love going on here.
Yeah, there is.
So I'm not going to be disruptive. My earth thing is I'm trying to say, okay, are the people listening to this? Because we have to remember people listening to this. Are they kind of earth energy is, do I understand? Am I understood? It's about community. It's keeping people together, making sure no one's alone. So my earth energy is saying, oh, I'm thinking, I really hope people understand this and I hope this helps them understand themselves. And I hope this is a really nice way to bring people together and you can understand your partners. So my different energies are dipping in and out because of what I'm trying to do. Whereas if I was in a different circumstance, I might be really stepping into, so I was running a big I was part of a big show yesterday. And I kind of stepped into some quite kind of wood energy. I thought, actually, I've got to be a bit disruptive here because there's some things here that are really not going to help society. So I'm going to be disruptive here and challenge people on what goes on. And so you kind of dip in and out. So it's not so much the number, it's the circumstance.
Gotcha.
That kind of goes on. And the thing really is to kind of just have a level of awareness of kind of what energy am I in, and is that energy serving this situation? Is it serving this relationship? Is it serving this the world at this moment in time?
Yeah, I know Holly has talked quite a bit about how important it has been for her from an astrology standpoint to have an awareness of, when you see behaviors or see people showing up in a certain way, you can kind of go, okay, well, I understand them differently. Sometimes their astrology chart, sometimes you don't, but you can kind of make some assumptions.
Oh, I can see.
You
It's
can
kind of
see
like the face, the jaw and stuff. You can tell. I'll say,
tell.
well, they don't have any water. They can't help that they don't show up, that water, in the element in
Yeah.
astrology, because that shows up a bit cold.
Right.
So you be the opposite of the fire energy that we're talking about here.
Yeah.
And, you can kind of see that. I'm like, okay, well, they just don't understand that. And honestly, it is an invitation, to your point, Nicholas, that it is an invitation to integrate. If you don't have that in your chart, to figure out how to integrate that compassion, that the more sensitive aspects of yourself.
Right.
But you don't naturally show up that way. That's
right. And with awareness, you can, just like you did yesterday, you can see what's going on in a way that you can then utilize one of your attributes, to insert it in service to the group. Right. And so I think it reminds me a lot of the astrology, and some of the things we've been talking about on the podcast is just creating awareness around things so that when you're in circumstances, you can show up as your best self and your most badass self, and in support of the greater good, do the best work for the collective. And so what I'm hearing from you is create the vitality test creates awareness about what tools you have in your tool chest, where you might have some blind spots, and then you can seek those things out in situations where you might need them.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And the one thing we'll say is that knowing your energy, if you know your energy type, your vitality test profile, it's not an excuse for bad behavior. Oh, it's my wood energy.
Right.
Kind of
You're right.
Oh, yeah, Holli.
So I'm going to push this
Holli.
I'm going to push this through at any cost. I don't care. Okay, it's my wood energy.
I'm a wood.
Right?
Yeah. That isn't how it. The idea is, because you know it, you actually are less likely to do it. It's not an excuse. Oh, it's my wood energy, so therefore I'm going to be disruptive and rude. Right. I mean, one of the things I think is really, so if you use the example last night, I went into my wood energy because there was a really big injustice going on. And I thought, no, I'm sorry. And I went, boo, kind of real, like say, kind of badass at it instead of disruptive. What's this? And just really, wood energy, when it has a plan, there is nothing that's going to stop it. When it doesn't have a plan, there's no way of getting going. But when you have a plan and you're heading somewhere, you just, so you can really kind of drill a point home. However, there's a point at which you need to say, not sure this is. and I didn't go over that point. It was just, there was an injustice. I didn't like it. And I said, no, we can't do this. We have to do something different.
That's leading with kindness right there.
Yeah.
No injustice.
So that earth energy, it's related to late summer, and those are those kind of like those lazy, hazy days where everything kind of slows down. You see those kind of adverts on the telly where there's kind of all the kind of beautiful food laid out. You're in Italy, they're eating and drinking, and it's sunshine, you're talking, and it's all family. I mean, that's earth energy. That's what they love and what's happy. And the big question is, do I understand, and am I understood? And so it's about, are we understanding each other? Do you understand what I'm saying? Their challenge can be that they have a perception that there is all the time in the world, and they will often give all the time, and their struggle is often to know the difference between giving and sacrifice. And they'll often move into sacrifice as opposed to a place of giving, because they want everyone and everything to be all right. And they kind of have. And this is where it's fortunate. This is a podcast rather than a video show. They can also, people like me, be a little bit prone to get a chubby face occasionally because we love our food. There's a bit of a foodie thing going on. Anyway,
Earth is my second. So there you go.
Yeah. So with myself, perhaps that is an excuse for bad behavior. But it is, food is important. It's nourishing, it's nurturing, it brings us together, it's communication, it's family, it's that stuff. And then the final energy is metal energy, and that's related to autumn to fall. And at that stage, things disconnect, they leave, they end, they finish. So their big question is, well, what's missing, what isn't there? and they have an ability to detach and look out from the outside. They're actually very, very sensitive people, and they will often cope with quite a brutal world by being slightly detached and keeping things out, or just say, no, I don't care about that. And they can appear like quite kind of cut off from things, but they're not. They're only cut off because it's just too sensitive. So every energy is related to a certain part of the body, and the metal energy is related to our lungs, and our lungs are the only organ that's actually connected with the outside world. Everything else is contained. So it's a very kind of sensitive, you get kind of strong smells, you can immediately do it. So they have that sensitivity, but they'll sometimes do it by creating detachment, love elegance, simple things. So simplicity is a desire, metal energy. Yeah. And then obviously the big questions, what's missing, what isn't done. They often, as an element, if you've got very dominant metal energy, it kind of gets quite a hard time in the world. And that's because, particularly in the personal development world, they get a really hard time, because the personal development world is dominated by different energy types with different agendas. Right. So people with a lot of water energy is about purpose. They say the most important thing in life is purpose. And you see Tony Robbins, big jaw, purpose, find your purpose, you'll be indestructible, right. You'll be fearless, you'll do Simon Sinek, all these purpose-driven people. And they'll say them, just find your purpose and you'll be 100% fine. Right. And they're dominant in that idea. And people with wood energy say it's not about purpose, it's about freedom. Right. Come on, it's about freedom. Nothing to do with it, it's about freedom. Get your freedom, laptop millionaire, freedom all over the world. And the fire energy type says it's not about that, it's about love. Earth energy type says no, it's about community. And then the metal type says it's nothing about that. It's about simplicity and zen and inner calm and peace. Yeah. So each energy is trying to drive their agenda within personal development based on how they see the world. And with fire energy, their big thing is be happy, keep smiling, get positive thinking. And you do that, everything's going to be great. And and because fire energy are great at promoting shining light and talking about stuff, etc., etc., they have sold the world on this idea of positive thinking. Right. Because they love it. They love it. And it makes them feel good and they're happy and they feel great. So along comes someone with metal energy and says, well, this isn't missing, this isn't right, this isn't okay, we need to do this, which is like absolutely essential. I work in lots of hospitals, and you have people that work on intensive care, for example, with lots of metal energy, and they'll say, this is missing, this isn't right. And they save thousands of lives by saying what isn't right and what is missing. Right. You get you spot what's missing. It's absolutely, someone I know works with nuclear power, and he's all the time saying, we've missed this, we've missed this, we've missed this. Right. But in the personal development world, they say, when they start going, well, this isn't right, you still need to do this. Oh God, you're so negative. No wonder you're so. You need to have positive thinking. Mm-hmm. You need to be really positive, have all these positive thoughts. And then they start getting really stressed. And I used to have people come to me, I'm really worried. I've read this book about positive thinking, and I just constantly see what's missing and what isn't there. And I'm worried I'm going to be not have a happy life. And I said, no, that's just one energy's view of it. And one energy's creation of it. So good.
I love that. It's so interesting. My sister-in-law, I had my family take the test, of course, right? And my sister-in-law has heavy metal energy, metal and earth, but more metal, I think. And she's an engineer. So she's great. She points out what's missing, okay, all the time, okay, and saves people's lives, okay, and
she clearly has a skill set we do not.
And she's hi Teresa, she's listening to this podcast for sure, but she would be one like that would go, what's all this positivity, like, you know, it's toxic positivity, you know, like we're now at that point, but she's interested and wants to understand it, but it's
not as needed for her. And
but I never thought of it like that, how you presented it, that the energies come at this spirituality or self-development in such a different way. And I see that in her, you know.
So I'm writing a book called, it's for people with metal energy, it's called The Positive Thinking Myth.
I love that.
And it's actually a fable. It's a story about this guy that's on the circuit of positive of personal development. He's going around these different events talking about he's got lots of fire energy. He goes around these events talking about positive thinking. He has all these, he's a guru and everyone's following him, and all these, and then there are 4 other energies there that are all struggling with the positive thinking in different ways.
Yeah.
Oh,
And it's it's an exploration around how each of us approaches our personal and spiritual development. So I'm not saying there's anything wrong with having a smile and being happy. It's just you've got to be careful that you feel you're not good enough, or you're not doing a good enough job, or there's something wrong with you because you can't do what someone else is telling you to do. So I have no interest.
Super important. Actually, that's really important to hover on for a minute, because I do think there is some there's some shame that people feel when they can't feel the way people are telling them they should be able to feel. But the reality is it's likely just not in their makeup to feel it the way people are saying. So that is really important to say. Because my son is metal. He's not taking the test. I will tell you right now, he is heavy. It's got to be really heavy metal. Heavy metal. And my fire
He's a
energy,
musician too. So I was trying to do a guitar, not a very good job. Sorry. Okay.
Close.
Apologize.
Just go back to listen to the intro. That will be better.
Yes.
But he struggles when he's really focused on some, detailed things, the things that are missing. And I'm like, it'll all work out. We just had this issue like literally a month ago where I said, it'll all work out, bud. It's just fine. You're going to be fine. It's going to be fine. Honestly, that really made him more anxious, more frustrated.
She was telling me, she goes, yeah, he doesn't want to hear that from me. I go, no, I don't think so.
No, he really didn't. And so, that helps me understand, like, he probably feels like there's something wrong with him if he can't get to where I'm at. And there's nothing, he's 17. There's nothing wrong with him. It's just, he is not wired to get there.
Like in that way.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely spot on. One of the things that we do some work with, and I developed over like my 35, 40 years in clinical practice, was something called conscious questions. And it's questions you ask to get your unconscious to give you the answer to. And you can target a question based around an energy, or so you can have you can ask a question, something like, why is it okay not to know everything at this stage? Okay. And what that is it's an assumptive question that has an assumption that at some point you will know, but it's okay not to know everything at this. It's okay not to know. So why is it? You say it's okay. Why is it okay not to know everything at this stage? It's fine not to know everything at this stage, and it's normal. And you can say, so you'll often. So basically, with a conscious question, your unconscious mind and your imagination has to answer that question, because that's what they do. They just have to answer the question, and the unconscious mind and imagination doesn't care whether the answer helps you or doesn't help you. It just answers the question. So you say, oh God, what's wrong with me? Why am I struggling so much? Your unconscious mind, your imagination will say, okay, this is what's wrong with you, and this is why you're struggling. You say, God, why do I feel so bad? Well, let me tell you why I feel so bad. Oh God, why am I so useless? Well, let me tell you why you're so useless. It just gives you those answers. So it'll always give an answer. So with conscious questions, we do layers and stacks and different things to allow people to shift in their thinking. So we were doing a lot over the kind of whole kind of COVID thing with people. And I have a monthly membership called This Vital Life, and we have the kind of a whole community. We look at conscious questions, the energies, the stuff going on with the year, different things. And there's a really nice, you can do kind of stacks of conscious questions. So you might do something like, why is it normal to feel stressed at this time? So you normalize it. And then you say, and why will I cope with that? And why will things be fine in the end? Or you might say, why is it normal to feel stressed at this time? And what aspect of my past will allow me to get through this? And then your unconscious mind will say, okay, what aspect is say, or why will my past allow me to? So you have to acknowledge the reality that you're really struggling, but yet you then come up with a second solution that would help mind you through it. So what you can't do is you can't ask a question that will clash. So I think you were asking questions with your son that was clashing with his unconscious and his energies, and it was just creating an internal. so we do talk about some stuff like internal contradictions, when one part of us want one thing and you were creating an internal, I should be like this, but I can't be like this, and I should be like this. And internal contradictions paralyze us and distress us. So you can use conscious questions, the understanding of the energies, in order to resolve internal contradictions and to also normalize stuff and then recognize there is. And I think the question, why is it okay not to know everything at this stage, is a really nice question for that earth metal thing.
Right. No, and it almost gives you permission to not know as well, and make that okay, so that you can move through something without all the answers, which, you know, metal will struggle with more than us fire people who don't give two craps. But let's just go and have fun, as long as we're enjoying ourselves. Who cares? You know. So yeah, that's a great. I love that.
Well, and so how people get access to these conscious questions is through the 5 Institute and the community.
Yeah. So in the book, The Art of Kind and Flowing Relationships, there's a kind of light introduction to conscious questions there, because they're really nice in our relationships. So you might be having something kind of going on between you, and you might then do a conscious question, and why is it important to remember that you just ask yourself, why is it important to remember that we're both different? And it allows the difference. They're not wrong, and there's just a difference. Or you might ask, if you're kind of getting down in and one of the challenge, and we'll have a podcast at some point to looking at the energy of the time we're in, but we're now in a water tiger year. Very powerful year, one of the most important years in the 60-year cycle. It's about legacy, it's about taking back your power, it's about authority. It's like a really, really important year for us to decide how we want the future to be. But one of the things we have to do is we have to resolve the black and white thinking that's come out of 2 metal energy years. So we've just had 2 metal energy years. Metal energy loves simplicity. And a way to have simplicity is to have black and white thinking. You're like this, you're like this, you're like this, you're good, you're bad. So we've had division based around black and white thinking. And we have to resolve that in these next 2 years, because these next 2 years are deciding how things are fundamentally going to be for the next 60 years. So it's a really, really important time to kind of to get that resolution right. So I mean, that's the essence of what we do at the essence of what we do at the 5 Institute is internal, external cultures. How do I live with myself? How do we live together? It's why I wrote the book, The Art of Kind of Flowing Relationships. It's why Runa and myself founded the No More Boxes movement. We've got a book called The Story of Boxes, How We Can Put Each Other in Boxes. And they're both books that are written to help us get through this particular stage of this black and white thinking. So you can use a conscious question like, why is it important to remember that we're both different, to allow difference? Or you might do a question of, you're in this situation and you say, well, what would the highest version of me do now? That's a lovely question.
Wow.
You're at each other, you're going like this, and you have to have a little bit of enough energy to be able to detach. Or if you're really angry, you can't be angry if your eyes are open. If your eyes are closed, you can't be angry. So you could just close. I mean, be careful the other person don't hit you, but just keep your eye, close your eye. And also, and this is some really wise words from me, don't do that when you're driving. Don't work out well.
Oh, that's helpful.
Safety first. I like that. Yeah.
So if you've got road rage, don't drive with your eyes closed. Just pull over and
pull over.
But anyway, what the book talks about, you have to have the premise enough calm to be able to just take metal energy is lungs, take a breath. It allows you to detach. That's how it works. So you just breathe in, close your eyes, get rid of the anger, and then you just kind of think, okay, why is it important to remember that we're both different? What would the highest version of me do here? And you might ask also, I love this, what would the lowest version of me do here? So you have some contrast.
Right.
Yeah.
What would the highest version of me and what my lowest version? And then what you're doing, which is one of the really important things within this water tiger year is you are taking authority back to yourself about how you feel and how you're going to act. So you just pause. Why is it important to remember that we're both different? What would the highest version of me, what would the lowest version of me? And that often calms it down. And this might sound like a joke, but it isn't. This next one is a really good question. You can often say, so why is it important that we're both different? And why is it important to remember that I'm married to an idiot? And then it kind of really helps. Sounds like I'm joking, but I'm actually true. It's kind of like it gives a reason as to why they're behaving that well.
But honestly, the face, the delivery, and then the words just didn't go together. I mean, you look so calm and serious, and then the words just, I mean, I couldn't help but laugh. That was awesome. That was awesome.
But that combination, that question, particularly like why is it important to remember I'm married to an idiot, it kind of, you don't say it out loud because that's not going to help the argument, but you could just, but it just gives a reason for their behavior because they're an idiot.
Right.
And that's fine. Why is it important to remember that I'm married to an idiot at this moment in time?
Exactly. Acknowledging the current state, right?
Oh my goodness.
Acknowledging the current state.
Okay, I love it. Okay, that's so awesome. Our time is winding down, but I do want to touch on, Jeanna and I are going to be the best students in your masterclass. It's this Sunday.
We're going to be down front.
In the front row of the
Zoom. Yeah.
Front row of Zoom.
So we're going to the masterclass on the water tiger. Yes. You're the water tiger. So it is a happy new year, and it was happy new year on the 1st of February. Yep. And so
you can sign up through the Vitality test. Can you get it?
Yeah, but this is coming out after. So is there reruns?
Yeah. So just go to 5institute.com. And there will be a link to see the kind of replay.
Perfect.
The recording, and it's 3 hours, but I'm breaking it down into kind of like designed to be a kind of a guide to take you through this year, because like I say, this year is a really important year to kind of get us through. So there's kind of tools to help you kind of get through this year to deal with the stuff that we need to do. Plus, each month I'm going to give you the energy waves of the coming month. Okay, this is the energy of the coming month. This is what we're going to be asked to do. This is what we asked to explore. These are some ways to handle it. This is some conscious questions you might want to use. So you might say, okay, well, this month is going to be about relationships, or this month is about. So there's a kind of a month by month guidance, and you get that as part of the masterclass, because it's not just about doing something in the moment. It's about making a difference throughout the whole year. So it'll be there as a recording.
Fantastic. Okay, great.
And it'll be a lot of fun.
It will be fun. It's early in the morning, and Jeanna and I mean, listen, you're the only person we get up that early for. I'm just telling you right now, you should be you're very special. Yeah, just say that. But no, we were really.
I was here by 9:30 this morning. That is unusual.
I know that is. But so it will help you navigate what's coming. So it's kind of like that current. I always call it the web of life, the matrix, whatever it is, that current, what's that current energy? Mm-hmm. How do I work with that to reset? Is it resetting everybody's life and trajectory for the next 60 years? Yeah. I mean, I don't know, I'm going to live that long, but I want to set whatever length I have.
I want it to be good the rest of the way.
Yeah. So just think, the last time we were in this year was 1962. So we are at the equivalent to the beginning of the 60s. In the beginning of the 60s, we started looking at things like human rights and trying to deal with that. But there was also things like a decision not to do kind of nuclear weapons. And Kennedy was really took it to the brink, but actually it was a really important action in order for us not to have a nuclear war. So we're kind of revisiting a bit of stuff going on. But one of the things that happened right in the beginning of the 60s is that they made a decision to base success of the world on economic growth and on GDP. Every country would be measured their success on GDP, and that was based around consumerism and production. So we said, buy, produce, and if we do that, the world will be successful, more money, and everything will lift it. And you have to ask, well, over the last 60 years, how has rampant consumerism and overproduction, how's it worked out for society? How's it worked out for the world? How have we got on with?
Right.
So we're being asked to say, okay, do we want to carry on doing that, or do we want? So it's literally those levels of decisions are being made in these few years about how are we together as society? How do we live? We've got changes in consumerism, in spirituality, in geopolitics. It's massive, and it will be us as individuals deciding how it will be, as long as we don't just go at each other. Because if us as ordinary people go at each other, then those in power will decide how it will be. And the game that
go ahead.
The game that's being played at the moment is there are arguments being created in order for us to have arguments for them to do what they want to do. So you've got pro-vax, anti-vax, this or that, and the black and white stuff. And that's what we're doing. And while we're doing that, someone else decides how the world will be for the next 60 years. And what we're saying at the 5 Institute is let's just, black and white stuff, we can resolve that, but let's just be aware of what we really need to be deciding. So in the 1960s, they said, we want peace and love. We say, well, do we want that again? Do we want community? Do we want thing? And the challenge is that the black and white puts boxes. Oh, you're on the left, you're on the right, you're on this, and you're on that. And we put each other in these boxes, and we fail to have the proper conversations.
Right. Yeah.
And to decide. So we're born into this moment in time in order to decide how the world will be in the future.
Yeah.
And we can do that, or we can't do that. We will do it, or we won't do it. It's in our gift to do it. So that's kind of, I know that's quite heavy stuff, but that's really what we're trying to do at the 5 Institute, is empower people to say, I want to have communities, I want to have this, I want to have things. And we will have new forms of politics that is not left or right. It's a different style of connection that we're forming.
It's really fascinating because I see this, the conversations have started, you see it with the younger people. I have a 18-year-old that, tells me, we should be more socialist and or we should be, we need to change our government. And I'm like, socialist, is that really going to work with so, you've got this older person here that's kind of black and white, like we don't want to go back there. How will that work? And my mind is boggled, my wood mind is boggled. And then you've got the consumerism, like everybody has too much. You don't need all that, just go to the Goodwill or the secondhand store and get your clothes, because we don't need to be creating more clothes and things to throw away. And so, we're starting to have these conversations even within our households. And so I think there's an interesting invitation to rethink that. And it's not about the argument, it's about evolving that to the next, cycle, or, I don't want to call it generation, but next cycle of, being better, I guess.
Yeah. And really catch oneself. When you hear the word socialist, you put a whole lot of associations in that box. And when you hear fascism, a whole lot of associations. Yeah. And actually, just don't put things in boxes. Be open to a possibility of, because as soon as you have two camps, then you have a space in between for a battle to go on. So don't start falling into the trap of this or that, this label or that label, or this, or you're a communist, you're a socialist, or you're this, or you're that, because that is the bit that isn't going to create anything new. It's just going to create defense of a position, whatever position it is. So it's thinking beyond that. And we have, in 2024, we have a wood dragon year, and that is equivalent to 64. And that is a year where a different possibility starts to arrive, as long as we can get to that
the progress
place.
moving.
So we're preparing for that 2024 year, wood year, and that should be an innovative year. And the dragon is, I wanted to be a dragon. I'm not a dragon.
Here we go.
How come other people get to be a dragon and I'm not? Doggone it. Okay, that would be kind of nice to be a dragon.
But I think, so I want to, my question is, obviously my thought is, in FIRE, we're all about community. How do we get everyone moving in this direction? Like, create awareness around the importance of this year or the next few years to build towards 24. I mean, is this a collectively, we all sort of have to settle on, you know, whether is this something that can be done within your own family, within your own communities, within as a list back and forthness for a while, and we don't kind of settle into something that helps evolve in the collective in the next 60 years, and we don't have something big to like make a huge shift in 2024 because we haven't done the work. Like, I'm just wondering about all that. Can you share your thoughts on that?
Yeah. So one's got to be really careful when one hears this. You say, well, that sounds like so-and-so. You're going to do the kind of box-based thinking. But I do a lot of work in organizations, and what we do is we create what's known as culture bubbles. So you have a group of people that say, okay, this is how we want to be. And what the nice thing about bubbles is bubbles tend to join together because they're not rigid. They just kind of have a flexibility. So the important thing is to just remember that we are very, very different. We have different values, we have different energies, we have different experiences, we have different views, and that's that's okay. And somewhere there is a middle ground of which we can be completely different and yet not have to go at each other,
right?
Because one of the things that has built up is lots of kind of stagnation and stuckness. So when we get trapped in our boxes, then we end up with kind of getting very stuck and trapped. And when things get stuck and trapped, the emotion and the stuff comes out is anger. And people are just really angry and stuck and this and that. So it's breaking down the thing of saying, well, actually, let's not do these camps and these boxes. You might say, well, that sounds like a liberal snowflakey idea of well, if you want to say that, but it's like you have to kind of say, well, so we just have to kind of relax enough to get some flow to movement. And what can we do ourselves? Well, cultures start with ourselves. So I do work in organizations, and I say, okay, tell me what culture you would like to have within this organization. And then they describe the culture that they would like to have. And then I ask them, and do you treat yourself that way?
Oh, wow.
And they go, no, because we kind of want the culture that we outside that we want to have inside. So it's looking at what do we want? What do I want my culture to be like? And then you say, okay, do I treat myself that way? And how would I treat myself that way? And that's your bubble. And then you have a bubble with other people and with different diversities, different energies, but you create the kind of bubbles that can exist and float around and kind of move. Yeah, so there's first thing is, do I treat myself that way to whatever culture you want to have?
Love it. Okay, I love that.
I love that. So as we wrap up, is there anything else that we have missed in the conversation? I feel happy.
No, I do too.
So I hope our intention is projected out to all of our audience.
Yes.
And is there anything else that we have perhaps we can share, or do we feel complete?
Nicholas?
Yeah, and I think actually this is a very slight box-based thing again. Some people approach the 5 Institute and say, oh, kind of Chinese energies, I don't like China.
Oh.
There's an interesting one. You say, okay, well, we're actually talking about 5,000-year-old China. Is that the same as, is it a bit like saying, oh, I won't drive BMW because of what they did in the war, or I won't do this because of what. So there is as soon as people hear the word, we do a box-based stuff. So if people are struggling with that, then it's just part of our struggle to let go of perceptions with it.
Oh, wow. I had never even thought about that.
No.
But you're right. Breaking down all those boxes is what's incredibly important, no matter what it is. But I had not thought about that.
Yeah. I mean, I do think there's, the Eastern versus Western. I think of it more that way than China in particular, right? Yes. A certain location. But, I do think there is a bit of that in terms of, foreign, different, maybe misunderstood, not understood, uncomfortable, whatever that is. That makes sense to me. But the China, I would never thought of that.
And we have those kind of Eastern philosophies, and then we have often many Middle Eastern religions. So I'm a Catholic. I was brought up as a Christian Catholic. So I'm part of a Middle Eastern religion. And then we've got Western values of behavior. So, we've got lots of lots of different stuff. And so, I love Eastern philosophies to understand the humanity and stuff. I really like Middle Eastern religions. It really works for me as a faith.
Yes.
And some of the kind of Western values and stuff that they kind of do work as well.
Yeah.
So
I like the idea if we could all just think of it as bubbles and like,
yeah,
I do. The visual is perfect where they all
Did you like bubbles?
I
Jeanna?
love me some bubbles. But they all kind of like, they do eventually find each other and hang out and connect.
Yeah, you're
and,
right.
And sit with one another. It's pretty, that's a great visual. That's actually
good.
Optimistic visual versus where we're at right now in the world.
Absolutely. And everything is going in the right direction. We just have to watch few things to watch. So I want people to be optimistic. We have a gift here, a wonderful time. We've been born into it. We have things like podcasts. We have things. We have beautiful levels of communication that we didn't have in the 1960s.
Right. Yeah. Now's the time to collectively help move things in the right direction through great conversations just like this.
Yeah.
So.
Yes. Thank you so much for this great conversation.
Fantastic. I need to go. I mean, honestly,
we could go on forever. Actually, I want him to uncork that bottle of wine and send them over. Zoom link.
I know. We would just sit there and watch you drink it if that's what it took, just to enjoy it with you. I mean, that wouldn't be nearly as fun, but we would do it. No, this was phenomenal. Thank you so much, Nick. We're excited to share the tools with our listeners. I'm excited for them to go and take the vitality test, grab a couple of the books. I think it's super important. And now is the time, people. It's the water tiger. You got to do it.
60 years.
60 years.
Cycle.
Let's not mess this up, right? All right. Thank you, everyone.
Okay.
Thank you.
Have a great
My pleasure.
week. Bye-bye.
Bye.